Welcome to another chapter from the book Changing Piece by Piece, which is from the Soul Law Way series of books. This chapter is called We Have Walked This Road Before, and it is about remembering. It is realizing that we don't have imaginations, we just have memories. We imagine that we can think up amazing inventions, stories and ideas, political structures, social concepts, telephones and all sorts of things. We're endlessly inventive, so we think. But we're not inventive at all. Everything that we have now, we have had before. Everything that we have experienced, environmentally, socially, health, disease-wise, politically, technologically, we have been through this before many times. There's an organization called the Brahma Kumari, started in 1938 in India, and now has around 2,500 centers around the world. It has a following of millions. One of their stories is that all life is a cycle. The world revolves. We have done this over and over and over again. Their perception, their story is that these dark times are ending and we are moving into light. This is the end of the worst times, according to the Brahma Kumari. The same story has been repeated in many different cultures and different philosophies. The Mayans, who were based around Guatemala and Central America, had a massive civilization and built pyramids and other massive structures. They held that the world goes in cycles. They said that the world revolves every back tune, every 2,500 years approximately. The same for the Tibetans, the Hopis, the Maoris, and for many other cultures and philosophies, that the world goes in cycles. It starts as enlightened, and then we slip into darkness, and then we come back out again. And there's even shorter cycles. We have lost things that we had before. For example, in 1535, the Spanish explorer Jose Fernandez sailed to New Zealand, landed at the east coast at Hicks Bay, and then went down to the Wellington Harbour, stayed there for 2 days, and then sailed down and settled in the north of the South Island. He and his men lived there for several years. He married a Maori woman and had a son with her. There is evidence of being there in many places in New Zealand, particularly in the Wellington Museum, which has hidden the evidence. The authorities do not want to acknowledge that the British were not there first. The Spanish were there before them. The Indians were there, the Tamil Bell, the Dutch, the Celtics, and so many others were there before the British. See, Jose Fernandez and other Spanish explorers had maps that showed every geographical detail of the world, while Captain Cook had no map. When Jose Fernandez arrived in New Zealand in 1535, he knew exactly where he was going. He had a map of New Zealand. And in the early 1500s, the Spanish and the Portuguese had incredibly accurate maps of the world, as if they were drawn from space. They agreed to split the world in two. The Spanish took one half of the world, the Portuguese the other. And that's how most of South America is mainly Spanish-speaking, and Brazil, which sticks out to the east, is Portuguese. When you look at the map of Australia, there's a state line between the Northern Territory and Western Australia, and that line is actually part of the original line that the Spanish and the Portuguese drew around the planet. These maps, drawn up with incredible accuracy, as if someone had drawn them from outer space, were lost. When Captain Cook came over with his little pad and pencil, he had to sail around the world and draw as he went. So somewhere between the Spanish and the English, we lost the maps. There are so many technologies that we have lost. We don't know how the pyramids in Egypt, Guatemala and Vietnam were built. There are so many structures that we do not know how to replicate. Machu Picchu, for example. There are technologies that we had and have disappeared, and they will come back again. And that's how life is. We think that these are the dark times. Perhaps they are. It feels fine to me, but yes, I know many people are living in fear. However, what I can tell you is that we have done this before. We have walked this road before. We have walked this many times before. These crazy, dark, fearful times are just one of the bad scenes in a play that we have performed over and over again. We are less civilized, less technologically able than civilization 4,500 years ago. We do not have the technology that existed back then, but it will return, as life is a cycle. I have written stories about having organic transport, where we have a little car when there's only one of us. Then we get married and we grow the car. Then we have children and we grow the car a little more. And then we get to choose whether we drive along the road, through the air, on the water. And then when our children leave us and our family shrinks, we can shrink the car. I don't imagine these things out of nothing. I recall them from my memory. I have been there. I've experienced that kind of life. I've lived with these technologies. See, everything we think we invent, whether it's stories, technology, social systems, political systems, military or economic systems, not a single one is new. I hope this gives you hope, because when we look at the world, we could think we're in a downward slide and we're just going to crash while we're committing environmental suicide, political savagery, and social brutality. We're destroying the world, it seems. We're destroying the economics. We're destroying people's rights. We're destroying everything. And yet it's just another scene in a play that we're playing over and over again. If you can look at it from the larger perspective, as the indigenous cultures do, who are more in touch with history, spirit, and that larger wisdom, we can return to the recall and realize we're not using our imaginations. We're just using our memories. If we can stop, and I would suggest meditation, and still ourselves, become mindless, lose the daily worries, find a way of returning to nothingness, to the abyss, to the emptiness, we will remember. It might be walking in nature, cooking, skateboarding, whatever we do in which we lose sense of time. When we lose sense of everything, it's even beyond joy and contentment. It's just being. For example, my mother loves cooking. When she's doing it, the kitchen is a complete mess. It's like a bomb has sight. There's stuff everywhere. But she's in presence when she's cooking. She loses sense of time and of herself in that. We all have something. I go there with meditating. I do it while I'm writing, where I can sit in a busy cafe and the world does not exist. I lose sense of time and of myself. You will find your own space, your own activity or non-activity. It might be in nature, it might be swimming, it might be in the bush. It might be anything, and it doesn't have to be particularly, let's say, spiritual. We don't need candles and robes and mantras, although that might suit you. And it feels like we're imagining new worlds, new places, new everything. But when we're in presence, we realize we're not imagining, we are remembering. We're remembering that which we have lost. See, any exciting thriller story or opera, it always starts off with a bang and then it slows for a while and there's description and then it slowly builds. And the drama builds and it gets more and more heavy and it gets more and more fearful. It builds to the climax, and then the most fearful part of any story is just before the end. And that's where we are now. We are in the climax. That fearful, scary climax is the end, as all stories are. Then suddenly, the light dawns and a happy end. All stories are like that. So just know that the worse it is, the closer it is to the end. We have done this before and we will do this again. While the insanity appears to be escalating, people are terrified. They're not logically terrified, but they have been brought to their knees by what they believe is something dreadful and finite and final. Life is not a straight line. It is a circle. And any misery that's going on, any fear that is going on, is the end of the story. As A Course in Miracles says, whenever we come to a crossroads, whenever we have to make a decision, we have already made the decision. We have already made that choice. The badness, if you like, proves that it's over. For so many people that I know, including myself, the ending has happened. The new story has started. But there's a global story and there is an individual story. So even though the new story has started, it will take time for some people to realize this. Some people think they're still in the old story. It is fearful and painful for them. There's this huge fog of fear that they can't see through to realize the news of the day. The new play, or the old play really, has started again. Others of us have realized this, that the new one has started. It's wonderful, it's uplifting, it's simple, it's connected, peaceful and contented. Some of us are already living the new story. It just takes a change of mind, a new perception. So I hope I give you hope and a technique to see beyond this insane world and know that the cycle has started again. Whatever you see in your imagination, just remember, it is not your imagination, it's your amazing memory. And let us live in those memories and live the new story, because it's already here.